A group of parents in Russia are calling upon Vladimir Putin to put an end to imports of the Japanese manga and anime Death Note. Why? Well, they're actually blaming it for suicides of teenagers in Russia. Now, never mind that this manga ended in 2006, and it's been around for a while, but parents are actually blaming it, all stemming back to an incident where a 14-year-old girl killed herself by jumping out of her home, a window on the 13th story of a building. And they went through her belongings. There were quite a few, but the things they chose to investigate on and latch onto were 4 volumes of Death Note found among her possessions. This kind of reminds me of the video games being blamed for violence in the United States. Now we're blaming manga and anime for suicide in Russia. Now, when people kill themselves, it's undeniably a tragedy, and it should be treated as such. But then we look into what caused this death, or what caused this person to be sink into such of a depression, and it's always a number of things. It's not just one form of media. Maybe that was something that resonated with the person, but I don't think it's a fair stretch to say this is why this person killed herself.
I mean, you've got heartbroken parents. They want answers. They want someone to blame. You know, there's no justice for, the suicide of a 14-year-old.
Well, because people try to think like what was going on in that person's head. And I don't think a person in a normal emotional state can grasp what's going on in the mind of someone who's suicidal.
Sure. I mean, she was probably depressed. She probably had some, issues that she needed to work through. Maybe she wasn't getting help from her parents. Maybe she wasn't getting help from school counselors.
It's impossible for us to know.
Yeah, and it's not like she had a suicide note that listed Death Note as one of the reasons she was depressed or anything, right?
Well, something that kind of is sitting weird with me is that Death Note it doesn't really promote suicide or...
No, it's a dark book.
It is very dark, but I think the overall message is pointing to the opposite of that. So if you're not familiar with what Death Note is, it's the story of a high school boy named Light who finds a notebook left by Shinigami, death gods. We were thinking about what this word was earlier.
Shinigami.
Gods of death who are basically toying with mortals for fun, for just enjoyment. And he has this notebook, and if he writes someone's name in it, that person will die. And there are several rules about the Death Note, but that is the gist of it.
And eventually he, gets paired up with this detective that's trying to solve these murders, and it's a cat and mouse game of wits.
And it's actually very compelling.
A very good anime. I only watched the anime. I haven't read the manga. But it's quite good and interesting, thought-provoking, and dark. Yes,
very
dark.
interesting because you think of the subjective of what is justice and
right, wrong,
what is right and wrong.
He was only writing the names of criminals
at first, and then it was people who were after him.
Right. So, I mean, all in all, it doesn't have much to do with suicide, but it certainly doesn't promote suicide. It doesn't promote murder.
Well, in the end, Light does lose.
Yeah.
And
thanks a lot. Spoiler alert.
I'll put a spoiler alert earlier. Sorry, my bad. I'm sorry that I'm spoiling something that ended in 2006.
There's a statute of limitations, but...
Yeah, but Russia actually does have a very high teen suicide rate. It's the 3rd highest rate per capita in the world. 22 of every 100,000 teens does end up committing suicide in Russia. So it is a problem. I've said this before for the video game and violence. It's a problem. It's a complicated problem, and it's definitely tragic, but I don't think we should be looking for the easiest or the most scapegoatable answer. I mean, it's going to be complicated. I don't know what it is.
I mean, grieving parents are looking for answers, but if she killed herself, because of a boy at school, you can't ban high school boys from Russia. If she killed herself, because of, some medication she was on, you can't ban that medication. She just shouldn't have been on that medication. You don't always have to react to these situations in terms of, well, this has to go.
Absolutist.
Had she killed herself with a gun, would they be banning guns in Russia? I really don't think so.